It seems that tomorrow will be the day that cash for votes will finally go into the Parliament. The good thing about the pressure that we've been able to put on this since Laurie Oakes broke the story earlier in the week has been that it has been progressively been put off by 24 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours. Now, this is the law. If you've been living underneath a rock, this is the piece of legislation that will see a pay rise for the faceless men. This will see $1 per vote in the lower house and upper house go to political parties over the next few years. It's tens of millions of dollars and it is extra money. Now, the government is out there arguing that it's all about making sure that becoming more reliant on the taxpayer means they are less reliant on private donations. Well, that's rubbish, because this system that is being proposed does not curb private donations. It only increases the amount of money that will be coming in through you and me. Now, I have been making it very clear that while the government is a lost cause, and please, don't think I've let Julia Gillard off the hook here. This is her law, this is her idea. This is the Labor Party's idea that they will put into Parliament tomorrow. So the only way to stop it is to check with the independents. What are they going to do? Well, I can tell you this evening that I have spoken to, as you know, on the air, Rob Oakeshott. He'll vote against it. Even Craig Thompson, who can't stand the sight of me, will vote against this tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen with Peter Slipper. I'm waiting to hear back from Bob Katter, and it looks like Tony Windsor will vote against it as well, considering that he referred to the whole thing as a slur earlier in the week. So, how do we kill this off? How do we make sure that cash for votes doesn't happen? Well, you're going to have to focus your attention again on the Conservative side of politics. And interestingly, Laurie Oakes, who started the story and has been leading the story now for a few days, he had an interesting update this evening on Channel 9. Have a look.
The leadership issue is still affecting Labor politics, with supporters of Julia Gillard fearful the mishandling of the controversial cash for votes issue could produce new caucus discontent. Mr Rudd is known to support party elder John Faulkner's opposition to the legislation that would put an extra $10 million a year in taxpayer funds into the coffers of political parties and independent MPs. Key independents are angrily against it.
This puts a smear and a slur on all of us.
Now, as the public backlash grows, opposition is building in the Liberal Party. Contrary to what Special Minister of State Mark Dreyfus told a caucus committee yesterday, it's emerged there is no written agreement from the opposition to support the measure. Liberal Party Federal Director Brian Loughnane didn't receive a copy of the bill until late this afternoon, and coalition sources say it's up in the air.
So clearly not as set in stone as it might have been a couple of days earlier. That's because of the pressure that you have placed upon Conservative politicians. Now, I don't ask you for much, but I ask you to do this. Get in touch with a member of the Shadow Cabinet tonight. If you're on Twitter, you can get to them through me, which is @PMOnAir. I'll also make sure that throughout the program we'll put up several of the Twitter accounts of significant opposition figures, because put simply, they have the chance to pull this whole show down. The only way it can be done is not by hoping that the government will suddenly do the right thing. That's not the way they work. It is to make sure that Tony Abbott does the right thing here and that the Liberals back him up. This is something that has to happen. It's common sense, and I know that thousands of people have answered the call to pick up the phone and call MPs. You can keep doing that if you like the old school social media. I know the number off by heart now. It is 02 62 777 111. That's 02 62 777 111. Call your local Member of Parliament. Particularly pressure. If you want to pressure the Prime Minister's office, fine, but the pressure does need to go onto Tony Abbott and his team, and get them on Twitter as well through me, which is @PMOnAir. Beneath, these are the Twitter handles to get in touch with them. Be respectful, don't be rude, but make it very clear. Tell them tomorrow, well, to stop the votes and make sure they end up killing off the idea of cash for votes. It's money that is despicable, is unnecessary, and is something that guarantees that there is no spectacular difference between the Conservative side of politics and any other if they back this through. The cash for votes bill looks like it mightn't even make it to Parliament. It seems that Tony Abbott and the Liberals will be voting against it. Tom Connell, confirm to me what you have been able to work out in the past hour.
Paul, we've had a senior Liberal source tell Sky News that this won't pass before Parliament rises. Now, they say there is 150 pages of this legislation. It hasn't gone yet through the party room, but that it won't pass because, as we've been hearing, a number of Liberals, a significant number have said, and I should also say Nats as well, they've had particularly strong rejections of this proposal. So as a result, it's not going to pass. It's not going to have that true bipartisan support. Also heard earlier tonight from Rob Oakeshott. Now, he said Brian Loughnane had seen this legislation today, had seen all of the pages, whereas he hadn't. He said many MPs still hadn't. So perhaps some indication that senior party officials, and we've got to remember the parties were going to benefit the most out of these changes, not the MPs themselves. The senior party officials, perhaps Brian Loughnane, George Wright, had agreed to this or wanted it to happen, while MPs were still none the wiser. We've heard some Labor MPs speak out about it, some Liberal as well now, and some National MPs as well. We know the Greens and Independents have been pretty strongly against this and pretty vocal against it as well all along. But that's what the Liberal source tells Sky News. It's not going to pass before Parliament rises. It hasn't yet gone through the party room, but that it's not going to pass.
OK, can you give me an idea of the chronology of events tomorrow? There's another day of Parliament, and then Parliament's again back next week. When they make reference to it rising, are they saying rise for this week or rise for the winter break?
They're saying it won't pass at all in the lead up to the election. So you're right, there is still more sitting weeks to go, but that this won't essentially pass the party room, that it's not going to be supported by the coalition. So there's going to be a withdrawal of that bipartisan support. We did hear about the bipartisan support. I suppose that was more from sources. We didn't hear a strong endorsement from the coalition in terms of this legislation. We heard earlier this week Mark Dreyfus come out and explain the reasons for it, and some of the reasons for other parts of it that did have more support, a bit more scrutiny of political donations, and also changing to some of the rules about what could be claimed back in terms of election campaign costs. But this element of it certainly wasn't strongly endorsed at any stage in public by the coalition. There was always that understanding. It did have some bipartisan support. They just obviously didn't want to speak about it, but it's now believed it will not pass at all at any stage before the election.
All right, and just finally here, Tom, I'm being told that the government may well have actually dumped the bills as well, so it won't even be an option for the opposition. Can I just be very clear about that? Have the Labor Party dropped the bills as well, or you're only hearing this from the coalition side of things?
I only heard this from the coalition side of things so far, but the general rule of thumb with this Parliament has been the Labor Party, the government, doesn't want to introduce bills that it's going to lose. So they've done a lot of, most of the bills you see that do pass, they either talk with the crossbenchers, the Greens, or make sure it has support from the coalition. If that support's not there, you'd expect them, yes, to dump that bill, similar to what you saw earlier this year with the media bills as well, some of those media regulations, so that they'll essentially, look, they can be shelved, they can be brought back at whatever time, depending on what else is happening, but yes, that they would be essentially shelved. I doubt they'd come before Parliament, strongly doubt that if it didn't have the coalition support. OK, thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for confirming that independently for us. The Telegraph's reported, we have as well now, and I've got at least 2 people inside the gallery who've just sent me text messages saying, yep, the government has now dumped the bills. So exactly the same thing has happened to the cash for vote situation as happened to the media reforms. Which means don't think this was a wasted week. This was an important week because we showed that, as we were talking about before, Joe, the only reason this stopped was because they were caught doing it, both sides, and thankfully People Power, it seems, has been able to kill this off.
It seems like not even the Labor Party and the Liberal Party could reconcile this week.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Angela, before we go, again, one final thought about this. The idea is that I think the lesson out of this, obviously for the political parties, is going to be try and keep a secret for as long as possible. But the good thing here is, if people want to get something changed, fire up about it.
Yeah, fire up. Talk to your MP. You know, that very grassroots power is still there, obviously. And I'm surprised, though. How do these MPs not actually have the report? Maybe they do need the money for a photocopier, because they haven't actually seen the legislation, have they?
Maybe they don't know how to read. Yeah, that'd explain a lot.
You've got to like this too. Again, sources inside in the gallery are telling me things like the government's line now is that they have dropped the bills because of voter backlash. Grace, you've got to love it. It's now the government's idea to get rid of this, not because the Liberal Party wouldn't support it because of the public backlash.
I know. You know, Joe said earlier that the Labor Party were going down fighting. Well, they're not going down fighting. They were going down thieving, and they got caught out. And the Liberals, maybe they had some hand in it, I don't know. But look, at the end of the day, you're right, it's people power. Paul, you've done a great job. Everybody on Twitter and everybody on Facebook and everybody who's rung people up have done a great job, and we should all be proud. Cheers.
All right, good stuff. To one and all, thank you very much on all of this.